When did you, would you describe your work for Ms. Heard as a personal assistant? Is that what you'd call your job title?
Yes.
Now, your work for Ms. Heard was it part-time or full-time?
It started as part-time and became full-time.
When did you change from part-time to full-time?
I don't recall.
What were your job duties?
Too many to mention.
Give me your best summary of what your job duties were, please.
Is this relevant? Okay, so let's see. I mean, if you are ready for a really, really long time of me explaining all of the details, that's fine. It's everything you could possibly do to run someone's life, okay? So it is grocery shopping. It is taking care of admin. It is running errands. It is getting the car fixed. It is getting the dogs groomed. It is picking up flowers. It is dealing with the decorator. It is dealing with the housekeeper. It is going on and on and on and on, and it goes on every single day. Arranging travel, dealing with all of the surplus staff around the travel, booking all the greeters, dealing with the changing of travel, okay, liaising with people that she's working with on films, updating her calendar accordingly, liaising with the people on set every single day to update her calendar to ensure that she knows what scene she's doing each day, what her call time is. Every day it's something different. But it's a lot. It's a myriad of things that go across the board daily.
You were paid for that work, correct?
Very poorly.
What were you paid? Was it $1,500 a week to start?
Are you kidding?
Is that what?
Oh, I wish. My God. No, it was not. She paid me $25 an hour to start off with, and she finally agreed after screaming abuse at me that she would pay me $50,000 a year once I went to full-time. And this was after me working for well over 10 years as a personal assistant. So it was very insulting to me, but I did it anyway because I had grandfathered in the ability to pick up my son from school and bring him to work with me at 3 o'clock.
When was the first time that you remember Miss Heard telling you that all wasn't right in the relationship between her and Mr. Depp?
I don't recall exactly when it started, but it was usually her complaining and crying due to, I would say, insecurities within the relationship more than anything else. She would be very, very insecure a lot of the time, and she would call me up crying. I remember one time she called me when she was alone in New York City, and she was crying and walking around the street crying. And he wasn't there. She was alone, but I said to her that she needed to go inside because I was worried that the paparazzi might take a photo of her, and she was in a very dysregulated state. And so just out of kindness, I said to her it was better if she went inside rather than walking around crying in public. I remember that, but I don't remember exactly when that was. It might have been 2012 or 2013. As the job went on, we called each other less and less and did mostly text messaging. It was all text messaging we did.
Did you ever believe that Mr. mistreated her?
No.
So, and why not?
Just never any evidence of it at all. I was there almost daily in both her place and then eventually at his place in West Hollywood, and then ultimately at the lofts downtown. It was a daily basis experience, morning, noon, night, all days of the week. So, you know, I mean, I never once saw any evidence of anything.
Did Miss Heard ever tell you that Johnny had hit her?
No.
Did she ever tell you that Johnny had pulled her hair or pushed her?
No.
Let me ask it a little bit differently. You never believed Miss Heard that Mr. Depp had mistreated her. Is that correct?
At the time or after? I never believed it. In what context are you talking about? During my employ or afterward?
During your...
No, never. And there was never any damage to the apartment that I witnessed. There was never any aftermath of anything ever that I ever saw.
Now, you, of course, have no personal knowledge one way or the other whether Johnny was abusive to her, correct?
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true, because if it was true, I would have seen the damage, even if I wasn't physically present in the moment of these alleged arguments.
And what's your basis for that statement?
Well, if someone's being beaten, there's generally physical evidence.
So your testimony is that if there was no physical evidence that you observed, then it couldn't have happened, the domestic violence by Johnny toward Amber. Is that your testimony?
No.
Well, I'm trying to understand what your testimony is. Maybe you could clarify for me, Ms. James. Is your testimony that you never saw firsthand evidence of Johnny being violent to Amber, that it couldn't have happened?
That's not what I said. You're trying to put words into my mouth. I don't appreciate that.
And at the time you were hired in March of 2012, had you ever heard of Ms. Heard?
No.
You previously testified today that at some point while working for Ms. Heard, you transitioned from working part-time to full-time. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
When did that transition happen?
I don't recall specifically.
Do you think it happened within the first year of your employment?
I believe it happened within around 6 months into the employment.
So most definitely it happened in the first year of your employment. Is that correct?
Yes.
You previously testified that you stopped working for Ms. Heard as her personal assistant in February of 2015. Is that right?
Yes.
And you also testified that Ms. Heard let you go upon her return from the Bahamas in February of 2015. Yes?
Yes.
Did Ms. Heard ever give you any indication or warning that your employment might end upon her marriage to Mr. Depp?
No.
How did it make you feel when Ms. Heard terminated your employment without warning?
A bit of a shock, a bit of a feeling of being blindsided.
When you first began working for Ms. Heard, and when Ms. Heard was in town, in other words, not traveling, how many times per week would you see her?
Almost daily.
And did that change when you became a full-time personal assistant for Ms. Heard?
No.
Would you see Ms. Heard on the weekends as well?
Yes.
Did Ms. Heard ever ask you to monitor press for her?
Yes.
What specifically did she ask you to do?
I had a newsstand guy that was instructed to hold 2 copies of every magazine she appeared in. Was a newsstand on Sherborne Avenue, just off La Cienega, and he would hold them for me, and I would go there once a week to pick up the pile of magazines.
I'm sorry, you got muffled out. You said, and he would hold those for me,
He
and
would hold them for me, and I would go approximately once a week to pick up whatever magazines Amber was featured in, 2 copies of each, which I would then store in her garage.
Why would you store them in Ms. Heard's garage?
Because she didn't want Mr. Depp to see them.
Did she tell you why she didn't want Mr. Depp to see them?
No, she just got very angry with me one day because I hadn't quite made it downstairs to put them in the garage when she came home, and she went absolutely ballistic over that.
When you say she went absolutely ballistic over that, can you please describe what you mean?
Screaming, yelling, abuse.
Do you remember what she said to you?
No.
But it was abusive in your opinion?
Blind rage.
Over the 3-year period in which you worked for Ms. Heard, were you ever with Ms. Heard when she was getting dressed or undressing?
All the time.
How often were you present when Miss Heard was getting dressed?
Every time she was getting dressed for a fitting, I would say 90% of the time I was there.
And just to clarify, was it just when Miss Heard was in fittings that you would see her in states of undress?
No, it was also in her apartment. She had no issue with walking around naked quite often.
And I believe you previously testified to this, so I'm sorry for asking you again, but while you worked for Miss Heard, did you ever see any types of injuries on her?
No.
Did you ever see any cuts?
No.
Did you see bruises?
No.
Did you see swelling?
No.
Redness in her face?
No.
How about Miss Heard having black eyes?
Never.
I didn't catch that, Ms. James.
Never.
Did you ever see Miss Heard cry?
Yes.
How often did you see her cry?
Hard to put a number on it. Sometimes she would cry on the phone. I think at least once or twice she might have cried on the phone. You know, and then as far as seeing her personally crying, you know, she was a pretty dramatic person. It's hard to really put a number on it.
I'm focusing on when you saw her in person crying. How many times do you believe that you saw her in person crying?
I would say twice, maybe twice.
Let's take that in bite sizes. The first time you saw Miss Heard cry in person, do you recall what she was crying about? Go ahead, Miss James.
Insecure emotions.
So the two times that you recall Miss Heard crying in front of you, you remember her crying about being insecure. Is that correct?
Yes.
You testified that she felt insecure about her relationship. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you expand on that? What do you mean by that?
She didn't like being away from his physical presence.
Did Miss Heard tell you that she felt insecure when Mr. Depp wouldn't be present with her?
Yeah.
Other than telling you she felt insecure about her relationship with Mr. Depp, what else did Miss Heard say about feeling insecure?
She told me she didn't like hanging out in his house with his friends because it was boring and they were all old men playing guitars and it wasn't interesting to her.
What was your impression of Mr. Depp?
He was very peaceful, very calm, almost shy, and very quiet. And I remember he was wearing red suede shoes because I didn't know where else to look. I looked at his shoes. It was like it's a weird recollection, I know, but I'm just being honest.
Did you ever witness Mr. Depp be rude to anyone?
He's such a gentleman. He's like a total Southern gentleman. So no.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp lose his cool?
No.
Did you ever see him scream at anyone?
No.
Did you ever see him break something?
Only in a video.
In your presence, did you ever see Mr. Depp break something intentionally?
Never break anything, never throw anything, always completely passive.
I believe you've testified previously that you have a son, correct?
Yes.
How old was your son when you first started working for Miss Heard?
4 years old.
And did you ever bring your son to work with you?
Yes.
How often?
Quite often, if I had to keep working, I would bring him back there after school. And if I had to work on the weekends, he would come with me then.
Did Mr. Depp ever interact with your son?
Yes, he was very kind.
How often did Mr. Depp interact with your son?
Whenever they were in each other's presence.
Can you give me an estimate of how often that happened?
Oh, countless times. He would even teach him how to play guitar. He brought him back from vacations. He showed him his amazing makeup makeover when he was doing Black Mass. He tricked him. He leant over and was saying, "Do you know who I am?" And he had the full makeup on. His son's jaw almost hit the ground. It was really cute, actually. Yeah. He gave my son a little pick as well, a guitar pick, which he cherishes to this day as well.
Fair to say you were around Mr. Depp and Miss Heard together quite a lot.
Yeah, it became increasingly more as the time went on. Yeah.
What was your impression of Miss Heard and Mr. Depp's relationship?
It did not seem like a perfect relationship to me, based on a lot of insecurity on her behalf, which seemed to cause confusion in the relationship. Maybe the age gap was an issue because of their different interests. I know that much. Apart from that, who am I to know the relationship, you know?
Did it appear to you that Mr. Depp was jealous of Miss Heard?
No.
Aggressive with anyone?
No.
Let's break that down a bit. When you say she was verbally abusive to you regularly, can you explain to me how she was verbally abusive to you?
Screaming over the phone. She screamed at me once in person, multiple times screaming at me over the phone. Barrages of abusive text messages, day and night, a lot of them in the middle of the night. I think you're aware. I think between 2 and 4 a.m. the barrage would start. That's what I'd wake up to. All incoherent, not really making sense, just basically someone to lash out at, you know, no apparent reason to it.
You testified previously that you observed Miss Heard be verbally abusive to her sister.
Yes.
What do you recall about that?
It was ongoing, kick the dog kind of relationship with her sister. So it's really hard to pinpoint any specifics, but her poor sister was treated like the dog that you kick, basically.
You previously testified that you observed Miss Heard be verbally abusive to her mother.
Mm-hmm.
What specifically did you observe?
Well, there is a video that online where you can see her being abusive first and foremost. So it's not even based on what I'm telling you. It's what I've seen, the interactions between the two of them when her mother was still alive, and the fact that her mother was terrified of her.
Did her mother tell you she was terrified of her?
She personally told me she was terrified of her.
Did you ever witness Miss Heard tongue lash her mother?
Here and there, yes. Especially when it was build up to a stressful event or something like that, yeah.
You said you felt that Miss Heard was verbally abusive to you. Can you provide me with any specific examples of this behavior?
Well, I thought I did earlier, but yeah, it was just so random and ongoing. You would never know when it was going to come left of centre. I do remember on one occasion when we were moving from part-time to full-time, and then the salary negotiations became a real bone of contention. And I specifically remember standing in her office where she leapt up out of her chair, put her face approximately 4 inches from my face. She was spitting in my face and telling me how dare I ask for the salary I was asking for, which was in fact approximately half of my regular annual salary. I was offering her that as a favour, and she felt that gave her the right to spit in my face. And there was a witness in the apartment at that time, by the way.
Who was at the apartment at the time?
The handyman, Hector Galindo.
I'm sorry.
The handyman, Hector Galindo. He was so mortified. He was so embarrassed to hear her speaking to me like that.
You previously testified that you observed Miss Heard having certain side effects from Provisual. Yes?
Yes.
What side effects did you observe Miss Heard exhibiting?
Manic episodes.
Can you tell me what you mean by manic episodes?
Similar to if someone was on some sort of amphetamine drug. Moving very fast, not making a lot of sense, hyper-organizing, hyper-tasking, just very, very hyper. Yeah.
Besides prescribed medication, did you ever observe Miss Heard ingest any illicit drugs while you worked for her?
No.
Did Miss Heard ever tell you that she had ingested illegal drugs?
Yes.
When did Miss Heard tell you that she had ingested illegal drugs?
Sporadically here and there.
What drugs did Miss Heard tell you she had ingested?
Mushrooms, ecstasy, and cocaine.
If you remember, how many times did Miss Heard tell you that she had ingested illegal drugs?
I can't remember.
Based on your personal observations, did it ever appear to you that Miss Heard was under the influence of illegal drugs?
Yes.
How many times?
I don't know.
Less than 5?
It's so long ago, it's hard for me to remember.
Why did it appear to you that Miss Heard was under the influence of illegal drugs?
Disoriented, partying with friends, lots of heavy drinking, laughing, dancing, playing, all the sorts of things that go hand in hand with imbibing in drugs.
Would Miss Heard's treatment of you change when she was intoxicated?
Yes.
How so?
She became more and more belligerent and abusive.